Hello guys and welcome to my new video. So today I decided to do a bit of a rant video about tiers in general. So I've been looking at tier 21s for basically all of the classes, the combinations for single target, the best trinkets and things like that. I've been spending a lot of time at looking at each class. And the more I look at the possible combinations of tiers, the more I realize the pain the tiers actually bring in for optimization, basically. I've looked at a lot of classes, especially for tier 21. I've looked at the Simulation Craft results and things like that. I know Simulation Craft results don't give you the best overall feel for how classes are going to perform, but it can provide you a good indication on what tiers are going to be used. Now the problem with Domination Craft is that it's using like Biz 960 plus items. So how is that going to affect the player who's coming straight into Antorus with lowish gear, with lowish tiers? What tiers should they be using at the start? What combination of tiers they should be using? What tiers should they be using until they get tier 21 2-piece or 4-piece? It is actually insane the amount of calculations that need to be done in order to determine the best possible gear for your character at your progression levels. It is actually crazy because, like, for example, even at the maximum gear levels for tier 21, balanced druids, for example, will be using tier 24-piece for single target, tier 24-piece with tier 21 2 set. They'll be using that for single target. They'll be using tier 21 4 set for AoE. So you are forced to go and farm tier 20 and get as high Warforged, Titanforged as possible. Kind of the same thing with Beastmastery Hunters. Even though the single target sims for Beastmastery Hunters indicate that you should be using tier 21 4-piece, but that basically requires you to have the highest item level for those tier 21 4-piece. At the start, Beastmastery Hunters are most likely will be looking to use tier 24 set with tier 21 2 set and a specific build as well. So you're kind of forced into farming old content, and that doesn't stop there. That does not stop there. There is so many different things, like all of the mage specs for single target at least are opting in to use tier 22 sets. There is, like, for example, we're not even talking about tier 21, we're also talking about like tier 19. Technically, if you're like a restoration druid, tier 19 2 set, highly Titanforged tier 19 2 set could be very viable in Antorus. So that's tiers from 2 raids that can be used in the current raid. I find that really, I don't know, I find that to be really odd, and I don't feel it actually adds much to the game. It just overcomplicates the game. This is basically my opinion after doing so much research at different classes. And it doesn't stop at tiers. There is trinkets. So we look at Convergence of Fates, which have been heavily nerfed. It is still the best trinket for Fury Warriors. It is still the best trinket, and Fury Warriors will be looking, and it's probably best for other classes as well. Fury Warriors single target Convergence of Fate is the best trinket. You look at things like the Tarnished Sentinel Medallion for Dumas Argeras. Arcane Mages are going to be using that for single target at least, or at least it looks like that. Then you have Holy Paladins who will be coming back to do Mistress Sajin over and over again to get the C-Star, because 955 C-Star is equivalent to Amatul's Vision. Insane. There is a lot of these trinkets, a lot of these tiers that basically force you into farming all the content, which is perfectly fine if you're a new player. Let's say you just joined Antorus, you haven't done any previous raids, and then you're like, okay, I gotta farm Antorus, but I also gotta farm either Tumas Argeras or Nighthold to get some kind of a tier set. Okay, I'm gonna go back and do all the content. I'm gonna experience content, not in the best way, because you'll be joining mythic pugs or whatever. You won't be learning anything. You'll be just breezing through the content. For old players who've done all of these tiers, going into Antorus, having to realize that you have to go back to Tumas Argeras and farm that over and over again in order to get your best tier sets, especially if you're trying to progress mythics, is just insane. It really is just insane, and there's so many different combinations that are available, and especially because of the latest tier set nerfs that happened a couple of days ago. A lot of the classes had their nerfs like slashed. So it's almost like Blizzard is encouraging you to stick with your tier 20 for as long as possible until you just out-level it by such a big margin that it just makes no sense to actually carry with tier 20. Not because tier 21 is so good, just because stats and item levels are just going to out-level it by crazy amounts. Is that a good gearing choice or a path for any of the classes? I really doubt it now, and I really agree with Blizzard's opinions about Battle for Azeroth by removing tiers and implementing some kind of a different system. I really feel it's really needed, because for an average player coming into this game right now, it will be overwhelmed by the amount of different combinations that are available, especially because we're at the end of the content. We're at the end of the, most likely, the whole expansion. Antorus might be the last raid, we're not sure yet. So you have like 3 tiers to choose from. So this is the most, arguably this is the most complicated time for any character to gear up. And this is actually really true for things like even tanks. Tanks probably got the least desirable tiers out of anybody. Most of the tanks have a pretty terrible tier sets. If you look at Protection Warriors will be running tier 24 set with combination of tier 21 2 set. And by using this combo, tier 24 set becomes irreplaceable. Doesn't matter what item level. Doesn't matter what item level. And that is just insane. I don't see the good gameplay or good gearing mechanics in this. And to some extent it was the same kind of deal for Restoration Druids coming into Tomb of Sargeras. Resto Druids were sticking with tier 19 4 set for basically the whole of Tomb of Sargeras raid zone. And they were only replacing tier 19 when you get really high Titan Forge tier 20. And the same thing is going to happen most likely to Holy Priest. Holy Priest will most likely be sticking with tier 20 for as long as possible, because tier 21 doesn't promote the best of playstyles, so doesn't synergize well with Holy Priest gameplay. So you can kind of see that there has been a lot of problems for certain classes to do with tier itemization. I can completely understand why Blizzard is removing tiers. I feel that as a new player, like I mentioned, you'll be overwhelmed by the amount of choices, especially when Antorus is released, when there's so many different opinions. There's going to be Domination Craft results released and things like that, but they will most likely be using the top item levels. And because of Titan Forging is part of this problem. Titan Forging is definitely part of this problem, because in order to find out the best tiers, you need to know the exact item levels. Like if you have a really high tier 19, you might not be using tier 21. And I know why Blizzard introduced Titan Forging, because they wanted people to go back to all the content and do all the content and possibly get upgrades. I feel that if you've done the old content so many times, like right now, I am literally sick of Tomb of Sargeras. I've done Tomb of Sargeras so many times. I can't wait for Antorus. And just the thought of going back to Tomb of Sargeras and doing it again, I'd rather just, you know what? If there was no Titan Forging or whatever, I don't care. Have Titan Forging and Antorus. Remove Titan Forging from other raids. Maybe that'll fix the problem. If you're forced into running old raids, it's like doing LF4. I don't want to do LF4. I don't want to do old raids. I'll just do Mythic Plus with my off time. I'll just stick with Mythic Plus. I feel Mythic Plus is just way more fun rather than just doing old content. And this has been my thoughts about how the tiers have worked out. I am really kind of overwhelmed by looking at all of the different combinations, all of the different trinkets, how tier combinations are working, and I know that the majority of players going into Antorus are just going to be really confused about when to replace tiers and which tiers to use. And at the same time, you also have legendaries that are going to take in specific slots where you can't use the tiers. So there's a lot of mechanics. There's a lot of things that you need to do for your character to actually determine the best gear, which I feel is not the best, but I understand why Blizzard is removing tiers, and I actually fully understand this. I know why you're doing this, and I fully agree with this. Remove the tiers. I feel it's going to simplify something, implement it in some other mechanic, just make it better to what it is right now. So this has been my overview of how I feel about these tiers. This has been a discussion video. Let me know how you feel about all of these crazy simulation crafts results coming out for your class. What tiers are you going to be using? Are you feeling confident about which tiers you should be using? Are you feeling confident about which trinkets you should be using and things like that? Let me know how you feel about this. Thank you for watching this little rant video, and I'll see you in my next little video.